It was supposed to be just another school day, but it wasn't. New York City, May 25th, 1979. The streets of Soho were waking up. Shops rolled open their shutters, cars lined the curbs, and neighbors hurried to work. In a loft apartment at 1113 Prince Street, a 6-year-old boy named Etan Patz tied his sneakers and swung a blue backpack over his shoulders. That morning, Etan convinced his parents to let him walk to the school bus stop alone for the very first time. Just 2 blocks, just a short walk. His parents, like so many in the late 1970s, believed the city streets were busy but safe enough for a child to handle. They had no idea this decision would change their lives and America forever. Etan walked out the door at around 8 a.m. He never arrived at school. He never came home. Etan Patz was bright, curious, and outgoing. His teachers called him independent. He loved drawing, playing with his friends, and dreamed about becoming a professional carpenter like his father. The Patz family lived in a close-knit loft community in Soho, at a time when the neighborhood was transitioning from an old industrial area to an artist's hub. Families knew each other. Children played on sidewalks. Parents believed the bustle of Manhattan kept everyone safe. Etan's parents, Stanley and Julie, were protective but also wanted their son to grow up confident. When Etan begged to walk alone, they gave him the chance. It was a small moment of trust. No one knew it would become the last time they saw him alive. The walk to the bus stop was short, 2 blocks south along Prince Street to the corner of West Broadway, a route Etan had taken many times, but always with his mother. That morning, Julie watched from the window as her son walked away with his backpack bouncing against his small shoulders. He turned the corner and then, nothing. The bus driver later said Etan never boarded. His classmates said he never arrived. By afternoon, panic set in. Calls to the school went unanswered. The police were notified, and within hours, the largest missing child search New York City had ever seen was underway. This was not just another missing child. This was the disappearance that would wake up a nation. Etan's story would ripple across decades, transforming how Americans thought about safety, sparking new laws, and putting his small face on millions of milk cartons across the country. But on that morning in 1979, it was only the beginning of a nightmare. It was a Friday morning, May 25th, 1979. For the Patz family, the day began like any other. Julie Patz, Etan's mother, helped her children get ready for school. Stanley, Etan's father, prepared for his photography work. Etan insisted again. He wanted to walk to the bus stop by himself. Julie hesitated but finally agreed. After all, it was only 2 blocks. Etan wore a blue jacket, a striped shirt, and carried a small tote bag with his lunch. He waved goodbye at the door. Julie watched from the window as her son stepped out, shoulders square with pride, his backpack bouncing. She thought she'd see him again that afternoon. She didn't know it was the last glimpse she'd ever have of her boy. The route was short. From 1113 Prince Street, Etan turned west, heading toward the school bus stop at West Broadway. Normally, Julie would walk with him, but that morning she stayed behind. Neighbors recalled seeing him. Some remembered a small boy walking with confidence. Others weren't sure. The city moved around him. Taxis honked. Shopkeepers rolled up gates. Pedestrians rushed to work. In that busy Manhattan morning, Etan simply disappeared. The school bus came. It idled for several minutes. Children climbed aboard, but the driver did not see Etan. By 3 p.m., when he didn't come home, Julie knew something was terribly wrong. Julie called the school. The teacher said Etan had never arrived. Her heart dropped. She called Stanley, then the police. Soon neighbors poured out of their buildings to help. Flyers were made. Phone calls spread. As daylight faded, searchers combed the streets with flashlights. Police dogs sniffed basements and alleys. Parents shouted Etan's name into the night air. The first 24 hours are the most crucial in any missing child case. For Etan, those hours slipped away quickly. By midnight, Hundreds of people were looking for Etan. Police set up a command post. Stanley, usually behind the camera, now found himself surrounded by reporters. Julie stayed by the phone, waiting for news that never came. The city that never sleeps had a new story, and it was every parent's worst fear. In a neighborhood once seen as safe, a 6-year-old boy had walked 2 blocks and vanished without a trace. As word spread, New York City mobilized. By dawn on May 26th, hundreds of officers joined the search. They went door to door, knocking on apartments, asking questions. Etan's photo was handed out on every block. Flyers with his face were taped to lampposts, storefronts, and subway entrances. The search stretched through Soho's lofts and warehouses. Police combed through basements, storage rooms, rooftops. They checked construction sites, alleys, and abandoned buildings. Every locked door was opened. Every shadow was inspected. The city was determined, but still, no trace of the boy. By the second day, helicopters hovered above the city blocks, scanning rooftops and fire escapes. Search dogs sniffed through stairwells, parks, and dumpsters. Neighbors opened their basements willingly, some even prying open old storage rooms, long forgotten. The sound of Etan's name echoed through the streets, called out by officers, neighbors, and strangers. But the only answer was silence. The realization began to sink in. This wasn't a child lost in the city. This was something much darker. Soho had been a place where families felt safe. Children walked the streets, and neighbors knew each other. But now fear spread quickly. Parents clutched their children tighter. The community rallied to help the Patz family. But at the same time, a sense of unease settled in. The police hotline rang constantly. Tips poured in. Some were well-meaning but false. Others were strange and confusing. Every minute wasted meant Etan was further from being found. By the end of the weekend, the story was in every major newspaper. Television crews filmed outside the Patz home. Reporters followed the search. Stanley, a professional photographer, printed and distributed photos of his son, images that would soon become iconic. But while the world began to watch, the Patz family was still living the nightmare of not knowing. The search was growing bigger, but the answers were not coming any closer. In the days after Etan vanished, suspicion fell on anyone who might have crossed his path. Police interviewed neighbors, shopkeepers, and delivery workers. Some people recalled seeing Etan, others didn't. The accounts conflicted, and with each hour that passed, certainty faded. One of the earliest theories was that Etan had been lured by a stranger, possibly someone offering candy or a toy. In 1979, the idea of stranger danger wasn't yet part of daily life. Children walked alone, trusted adults, and parents rarely imagined predators hiding in plain sight. Etan's case would change that forever. Tips came in by the hundreds. Some claimed Etan had been spotted in other states. Others swore they saw a boy matching his description in parks, subway stations, or even faraway towns. Each report raised hope, only to collapse under scrutiny. Detectives followed every lead, but most ended with disappointment. The Patz family clung to hope with each new call, only to be left in deeper despair when it turned out to be another dead end. By the early 1980s, attention shifted to a man named Jose Ramos. He was a known pedophile living in New York, with a disturbing history of luring boys. Ramos admitted to being with a child who looked like Etan around the time of the disappearance. For many years, Ramos was considered the prime suspect. He was even convicted of unrelated child abuse crimes and sent to prison. The Patz family believed he was responsible. In 2004, a civil court found Ramos liable for Etan's death, but criminal charges were never proven against him. For decades, Ramos was the shadow that haunted the case, but he was never officially convicted of killing Etan. The false hopes, the endless questioning, the lack of answers, it wore on Stanley and Julie. They never gave up, but the uncertainty became part of their daily life. Stanley's photographs of Etan became the public's window into who the boy was. Julie fought to keep the case alive in the media. Year after year, they waited, and year after year, the trail grew colder. As the years passed, the search for Etan Patz grew colder. By the late 1980s and into the 1990s, the case had no clear answers. Jose Ramos remained the prime suspect, but no physical evidence tied him to Etan. Every anniversary, the Patz family relived the same pain. The media would cover the story again, asking the same questions, but offering no new hope. For Stanley and Julie, it was like time stood still. Life moved forward around them, but their son was frozen in 1979, forever 6 years old. Even as the investigation slowed, Etan's face stayed in the public memory. His photo appeared in news specials, documentaries, and anniversary reports. Each May 25th became a reminder, not just of Etan, but of all missing children. Parents began to see his case as a warning. Strangers remembered his smile long after the posters had faded. Etan had become a symbol, but for his family, he was still just a little boy who never came home. Stanley and Julie never moved away from their home on Prince Street. They refused to let go of the place Etan had last been seen. Stanley often used his camera to keep Etan's image alive, publishing photos that reminded the world of who he was. Julie worked tirelessly with advocacy groups, pushing for reforms, keeping the case alive. But behind their courage was daily heartbreak. Each false lead was a new wound. Each year without answers deepened the silence. For decades, Etan's story seemed destined to remain unsolved, until a new investigation reopened old wounds, and finally, after more than 30 years, revealed the truth. In 2012, more than 3 decades after Etan vanished, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office reopened the case. Advances in psychology, fresh eyes on old evidence, and a renewed push for answers brought investigators back to Soho. That spring, police searched the basement of a building near Etan's home. They dug through concrete, looking for remains. The search came up empty, but it renewed the focus. Someone, somewhere, knew the truth. Then came a shocking development. Investigators questioned a man named Pedro Hernandez, who once worked in a small grocery store near Etan's bus stop. Hernandez, now middle-aged and frail, confessed. He said that on the morning of May 25, 1979, he lured Etan into the store's basement with the promise of a soda. He claimed he strangled the boy and placed his body in a bag, but Hernandez's story raised questions. He had no physical evidence, no body was ever found, and his mental health history made his confession controversial. Was it real, or was it the product of a disturbed mind? The case went to trial in 2015. For the Patz family, it was another emotional roller coaster. In the courtroom, Hernandez sat quietly as prosecutors laid out his confession. Defense lawyers argued he was unstable and had imagined the crime. The first trial ended in a hung jury, but in 2017, after a retrial, Pedro Hernandez was convicted of Etan's murder. He was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. For Stanley and Julie, the verdict brought some closure, but not peace. They had waited nearly 40 years. They finally had a legal answer, but their son's body was never found. Julie later said, "We are truly never going to know what happened to our little boy that day, but at least now, we know who was responsible." Etan's case was no longer unsolved, but the mystery and the pain would never fully disappear. Etan Patz was only 6 years old when he disappeared. He never had the chance to grow up, to chase his dreams, or to come home. But his short life changed America. He became the boy who opened the nation's eyes, the boy who made families safer, the boy whose legacy lives on in every child protected today. Etan Patz may be gone, but he is not forgotten. If this story moved you, like this video, share with someone and subscribe for more real-life true crime stories. Echoes of crime. Every secret has a voice.